Hello and welcome back to iOS development tutorials. In the last tutorial we did, we added this label to our user interface, to our view controller, and just made it simply say I cannot be changed. In this tutorial we're going to start talking about buttons and how we can create an action that'll change that label. So let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to do is over here in our object grouping here is we're going to select on our button. We're going to just drag it as well here to our view controller, and if we double click the button we can change our label for it. So let's go ahead and call it change label text, and that has added a button to it. Now it doesn't do anything because we haven't added an action to it. All it simply did is add that to our view controller, just as we did with the label. So what we need to do is we need to first tell our view controller what this label is called and give it a name, and then we need to create an action that when it is clicked that we can change what the label text is going to be. Now the easiest way to do this is you'll see up here in the upper corner where we have editor, there are 3 buttons, and if we click on the middle one, looks kind of like a butler. This is the assistant. So if we click on it, it pulls up our view controller, and if not, you can always click on it and then just say .h, and now we can actually see both of these side by side. So if we click on our label and then hold down the control key on your keyboard and just going to drag over here and right underneath interface, you'll release, and it pops up this new little pop-up here. And what this does is it goes ahead and it sets up a lot of the code for you, so you don't have to try to type it in yourself. Again, just to make it easier and faster. The connection that it asks is what is it? As far as is it an action, is it an outlet? In this particular one we are using an outlet and not a collection. It's just a simple single outlet, meaning we are going to output some kind of information to it. The name is what do we want to call this component. So let's call this our, let's see, what would be a good name? Let's call this status label. And then the type is what kind of object is it? We're obviously using a label, so it'll be of a UI label. And then the storage is back to, if you remember, in the other tutorial where we were talking about the automatic reference counting that it does, is how much does it need to remember, or how powerful does the remembering need to be on it. You can either have a strong or a weak. Now in our particular tutorial we're just going to use a weak storage to it. If it forgets it because we move to another page, that's okay, because when we come back it'll be alright and we can always get back to where we were. So with the weak, let's go ahead and say connect, and you'll see what it did is it added this property with the weak storage, the non-atomic, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's not really important at this moment. It created as an outlet with a type of UI label, and then our name is a status label. So that gives us just the basics of we created a property, meaning we can either set a property or we can get a value from it, and it's all attached to this label on your status. Now another piece we need is we need to create our action that is going to be attached to our button. Now to create the different actions, what we'll do is we will start with a minus and then a parenthesis, and what we're going to type in is IBAction, and then what do we want the selector, or what do we want the action name to be? In this particular one, let's call it button pressed, and then we always finish our lines in a semicolon. So once that creates, you'll notice that there is a difference here between these two line numbers. On this line number there is a 0 or a circle with a dot in it, and this one is just a circle. What that's saying is this one is linked to our storyboard, this one has not been linked yet, and we need to link it up so when we click on the button it will actually come over here and then run this particular action against it. So to do that, it's very simple. At this point what we can do is we can go ahead and go back to our main editor, and we'll click on our button, and we have all these events down here that we can run. And the one that we're going to look up is the touch up inside. What this means is we're going to touch it, and as soon as we pick our finger up, if we're on the inside of the button here, then it's going to run that event. So if we click on the touch up inside dot next to it, and we're going to drag that over here to the view controller down here on the black bar, and you'll see that this was the action that we have of button pressed. And so now the two are linked. So let's save our progress so far in Storyboard. If we come back to header, you'll now see where it has been connected. And what we'll have to do then is now create the actual action over here on the viewcontroller.m. Now when you first come to it, you'll notice that there's a warning that shows up. And the warning, if you click on it, it says it's not complete. The reason is because in our header we have an action that we have not actually done anything with yet. So let's go ahead and copy that, the whole line there, and we'll come over here to our view controller and we'll paste it in, and then we'll wrap some of the braces around it, and you'll see again it has been linked, so it knows what it is. And then this is where we can write our code that we want this button to do something. So in this particular one, we want it to change our label that we gave status label as the name, and we want to change that text property. So to do that, it's pretty easy. We know that it is a status label that we want to change. But where is the status label? Well, it's on this view controller, so we can type in self.status label, and we want to change the .text property of the status label, and we want to assign it to something. So status or self.statuslabel.text equals, and here's where Xcode and Objective-C is just slightly different. We want to pass it a string or a text value. But for Xcode to know that you're passing it a string, you have to put an @ symbol before it, and you'll notice that it already starts adding in the rest of the quotes and then a string. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And then what do we want our string to be? Let's make it say, okay, maybe I can be changed, end quotes and semicolon. So let's go ahead and run this in our simulator here. So let's go ahead and building it real quick. It succeeded. And so here's our label. It says I cannot be changed, but our button that says change label text, and when we click on it, it says okay, maybe I can be changed. So that's the very basics of a button so far, is that you create an IBAction, you give it some kind of selector name, and then you just add your code underneath it of what you want it to do. On the next tutorial, what we're going to do is, if we're going to have it to where you can change what you want that text to be. So instead of it always saying the same thing, we'll add a text box. So the text box, whenever you select it, you type in what you want it to say, you hit change label text, and now it'll make it to whatever your custom message was. If you wanted to make it also blank, then we'll also keep it as the default here of either way. So either using as the default or using on a text box. So come back on the next tutorial. We'll start talking about text boxes as well as the keyboards, because there's a lot you can do with the keyboard, whether you want a number pad or an email, all that kind of good stuff. So like, subscribe, come back to us on the next tutorial as we start talking about text boxes.